All right, everybody, we're here for conversation number 62. So it's we're
I
getting
just
up
had a
there.
disturbing thought, Razib. So I know you have children of a certain age, as do I, and so it occurred to me that we're in conversation 62, and so somewhere in about probably when we get close to Christmas time, we're going to have conversation number 67, right?
Yes.
And that's apparently a huge thing with the youth. I'm sorry, I just brought that up. My
Yeah.
my oldest son hates this, by the way. He's
Wait,
like,
okay. Your oldest son, your firstborn, like, I gotta say, like, he's kind of a fuddy-duddy. He's always been a fuddy-duddy.
it's true. Yes,
I was
yes,
thinking
I
about
appreciate that. And believe me, Razib, as your kids get older, you will wish that they were fuddy
I
duddies.
know, I already do, just, just like context here, real quick for the listener. My daughter is visiting, and she's a tween, so all sorts of dadly stresses are being induced. But it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I wish Fuddy Duddy is like the kind of child you want to have.
Right. Yeah. Well.
Be a little too avant garde. It's like stressful. I guess like oh yeah, we should probably talk about the shutdown. It's over almost. It's
Yes.
gonna be over. So basically the Democrats accepted that there was going to be a vote on healthcare subsidies in December. In return, which that will fail, but
Right.
they accepted that as opposed to the subsidies themselves. And so, Senate has to like vote, and then the House has to vote, and then it's over until January. I think it's like kind of a resolution that'll get us like another couple of months.
Right.
Um, I think one thing I want to bring up, Trump was starting to pressure the Republicans on ending the filibuster. Republicans
Mm.
don't want to end it. The reason Republicans don't want to end the filibuster is a way to prevent things from happening. And traditionally,
Right.
the small government party has been the one that doesn't want things to happen.
Right.
And so that's why Democrats like Matt Iglesias and Ezra Klein, like younger Democrats, have been pushing to end the filibuster for 20 years, whether it's under Republicans or Democrats, because their idea is basically once it's gone, there's a lot more things that can be done, even if Republicans initially do it. And a lot of Republicans are saying Democrats are going to end this eventually anyway. The last time Manchin and Sinema were the ones who put a stop to it, and they're
Mm.
gone now, or they're going to be gone. I think Manchin's still until the fall. But in any case, the point here is, there's some other political stuff that kind of came up in relation to the shutdown, and I do think the Republicans that say the filibuster is going to end when the Democrats have power again are correct. I don't really see how they're wrong about that. But
Well, we'll see. The Democrats could, the next time they have a trifecta, there will obviously be pressure for them to get rid of the filibuster. And I agree that um, it probably makes more sense for Democrats to get rid of the filibuster than Republicans because the Democrats actually have an agenda. There are things that they would like to do. If the Democrats got rid of the filibuster, they have said, well, we need to do this so we can pack the Supreme Court or make Roe v. Wade the law of the land in 50 states, or maybe do amnesty for illegal immigrants, or do some, healthcare, whatever. And the Republicans, if you ask, well, if you got rid of the filibuster, what would you do? They're like, well, we would fund the government for 3 months. They don't have the Republicans just don't have much of a federal legislative agenda other than tax cuts, which they don't need the uh, filibuster. The filibuster doesn't apply. It doesn't apply for you know for judicial nominations, and maybe they could do some immigration stuff, but like some of the stuff. I mean, one of the reasons why parties don't want to get rid of the filibusters because they're worried about the other side using it. But the real reason is there's stuff that they are formally for that's popular with their base, but they don't want to do, or at least enough of the caucus doesn't want to do that it would be embarrassing. and for them to do it. And I suspect that the same is true for the Democrats. I think if you had 52 Democrats, okay, Manchin and Sinema are gone, but you know who's there now? John Fetterman, right?
Yeah,
And there are other
I
people.
see.
I think you have a one thing that happens over and over is however many votes you need, just magically you always end up one short.
Yeah,
So people kind of think, well, if you just get rid of this one guy or gal in the case of Sinema, then they could do it. But if they did that, magically someone else, another objector would show up, because I don't think Chuck Schumer or whoever the leadership is really they like being able to say, hey guys, I know we want to, uh, give taxpayer trans surgeries for illegal immigrants, but unfortunately the filibuster means we can't do that, right? So, it could get to the point where they're so mad that they do get rid of it, but I would not be surprised if the next time there was a Democrat trifecta, it just turned out that, there's a
yeah.
couple of squishes in there, and so we can't do it.
That's
Uh,
fair. That's fair.
yeah.
Well, I mean, so the shutdown, has not really affected my life too much, except that air travel is starting to be impacted. That affects me for various reasons, just work. I mean, you too.
Yeah, I have a flight on Wednesday, so I hope the thing gets all settled, right?
Yeah,
Because
same. Yeah. So I don't have a flight, but just someone, my daughter does. So, um, I'm hoping. Well, I mean, I'm hoping people start coming back because they know that work is going to start soon anyway. I don't know.
right,
I don't know.
right. Even if
It's
it's
like,
not formally, yeah,
yeah,
it's
they're gonna get their back pay and everything like that. They don't have to look for a new job.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I think that people would be okay. I do have to say something kind of weird. I've seen some clips. To be this, I've seen some clips of obese people on Snap, which is used to be called food stamps, like
hmm
freaking out, like what was going to happen.
right,
Like I understand if you have growing kids. To be fair, I don't want to make light of whatever people depend on these sorts of things, whether you think it's a good program or not. But that's just they've lived their life that way.
yeah,
But if you're an obese 30-year-old woman, for example,
right,
they do know that they're not going to starve.
right. Well, they might feel like they're starving,
Yes, they feel extremely hungry, but the
right.
reality is like,
Yes, yeah, you back.
okay, okay, I'm just gonna just keeping it real there. But the
Yep.
reality is, you learn in like college biochemistry that like basically you can survive many. I mean, a
Right.
regular person can survive at least a month without food. I mean, I've had
Yes.
friends that have done 30-day water fasts and they've worked and they've lived a regular life. I've done 8-day water fasts a couple of times in the last 3 years. And basically, after the second day, it's not really that hard, to be honest. You're a little lower energy, but that's it. You're not. I think people think that when you're fasting, you're starving the whole time. You're not. Actually, after the initial hunger, your body just goes into a different state and starts like metabolizing its own fat. And like morbidly obese people, like they can definitely live. I mean, this has happened multiple times. They can live like a year without any food.
hmm
Because
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think it's also it's certainly not true that just because you don't get SNAP that you're not going to be able to eat literally anything. Um,
there's food pantries, there's other places. Someone was like posting like, oh, like they got pinto beans and they don't know how to cook it. You
right.
know, I mean, so
Yeah.
look, I mean, I feel like kind of like of two minds about Snap. Like on the one hand, like it's a pretty straightforward program in a way.
Yeah.
It's just like, supposed to give food to people, and food's not that expensive, and I'm not like it seems like it's pretty good to like people not to be hungry. On the other hand, I have been surprised, to be honest, about how generous some of these SNAP benefits are. I would be liking some of those. No, it's just no. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I will say so. One thing that I do think uh, people get confused about is by SNAP is that you know I saw people sharing. Um, there would be like images from some store or whatever, and it would be like, lobster SNAP eligible or steak SNAP eligible or whatever. And, they would be complaining. It's like, people on SNAP get this and, I can't afford it or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like SNAP is it's a monetary benefit. So you get, I think it's $187 a month on the card or whatever, and you can buy it, like if it's food or beverage, pretty much anything is eligible. So you can buy lobster with it, but that means you're going to have less money for anything else. It's up to you, like how you spend those dollars. As far as welfare programs go, it's probably on the better side because it is, it's has many of the advantages of just giving people cash, but it's also restricted to food, so people can't use it.
Drugs or whatever, yeah.
Drugs or alcohol is not like you can't. I don't think alcohol is SNAP eligible or other stuff like that. It is. I do think it's a little weird as you mentioned, in a country with an obesity epidemic and particularly consecrated. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know this, but I wouldn't be surprised if the average SNAP recipient was heavier than the average non-SNAP recipient, in our country. So I don't, there's something kind of weird about that, but I do think the one thing I will say is, and it's not surprising to me that the government shutdown is ending the way that it has, because it basically always ends this way, which is whichever side is advocating for a clean CR wins. Whoever's trying to use the shutdown to achieve some other goal, they do not achieve it. This shutdown's been a little odd in that it lasted quite so long, and it seemed like people were not paying so much attention. I think the SNAP thing probably did hurt the administration, because whatever you think about the program itself, and most voters, most Republican voters certainly are not on SNAP, although more than you might think probably are. But the real thing about it is it made it seem like it was something the messaging. If you're in a government shutdown, the messaging needs to be, hey, we want to reopen the government, but it's the other guys that are trying to stop it, right? Whereas the SNAP thing was the one element where it seemed like the Republicans were kind of like glorying in it, people not getting the benefits, or they were doing it discretionarily.
Yeah.
And I do think I've been watching the polling, like Trump job approval, Nate Silver, he's got like a tracker, which I think is but there's other ones. And for most of the shutdown, Trump's approval rating did not move at all. It was where it was. But then once the SNAP thing started, it did kind of decline. So I do think that kind of did hurt him a little bit, is being associated with that. Now, of course, like he's talking about, not only is the government going to be open, but he's going to be sending everybody $2,000 tariff checks or something. So, maybe his popularity will rebound if that happens. But other than that, I think the last time we discussed the government shutdown is when it was first starting. It was like a month ago or something. And that's probably prudent decision making on our part, because even though it was going on, I don't know that there was a huge amount to say about it. And now, it'll probably be a couple years. Like people will have to kind of forget a little bit before someone decides, oh yeah, we're going to do a shutdown, unless they agree to like cut Israel funding or so. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the shutdowns are kind of like, look, America has a governance problem right now. So, for example, people complain about immigration. There's been a whole thing for the basically the whole 21st century, um, and there's like common sense ways we can fix our system, but we haven't like really introduced new legislation about it since I think the 1980s, and
Hmm.
it's not working right now. It's not working well. Like whether you're pro or anti, pro whatever, both sides are unsatisfied because it's just like it's a jury rigged system that just is not developed to the current conditions. But we can't, pass legislation because the legislature just is not working correctly. I guess we haven't
Right.
passed a budget in many years,
Right.
so it's just like we're treading water in a lot of ways. I feel, and like the shutdowns are they're a symptom of an underlying problem of governance in this country, and I don't know how it's going to resolve itself out.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe once the president Trump builds the Death Star, then the last message is the republic can be abolished. But um, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is related to a thing that I want to talk about. Is just like part of the Trump administration, just like usurpation of powers in a way, like like making all these executive orders and trying to make it so the president can do a lot of things, is just because it seems like Congress can do fewer and fewer things over the years, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And so nature abhors a vacuum, and Obama started doing things with DACA and other things when he said he couldn't do it, and then he ended up doing it.
Right.
And so it's like there's been unwritten new constitution that's emerging in the United States that's like aimed more towards executive power, just like FDR arguably kind of, that period in the early 20th century transformed the American government, made federalism much more, powerful in this country. And it's just like, there are just some changes that are happening, and people are just doing things and see if they can work, right? And so, I don't know. That's how I think about the shutdowns. It's just the government just can't get its shit together, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, partly also it's like Democrats are extremely angry. They keep losing, et cetera, et cetera. But have to be entirely honest. Like you're in the opposition party. You lost the
Right.
presidency. You don't have like the Senate or the House. Like what does the base really expect? But like this is just something that they can do, so they did it. You
Yes.
know?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And probably, I mean, a lot of stuff that happens in Congress is just symbolism and showboating anyway, because it does not really function all that well.
Yeah, yeah. Should we talk a little bit about the heritage thing real quick, like how it's like
Sure.
ending up?
Yeah.
Okay, this is like not ending, in a way. 'Cause I think
I
this is
can't
like the
believe
third.
this is like the third week we have to talk about, you know,
Yeah, yeah. So, I watched actually like I listened to the whole like 2 hours that was leaked of like the struggle session that Kevin Roberts had to go through in front of like all hands meeting. Did you watch that at all? Did you see that at all?
I watched clips.
Yeah.
I did not watch the whole two. I couldn't make myself watch the whole 2 hours. It did seem. I mean, probably. I don't know that I got a representative sample of clips. Most of the clips that I saw were questioners who were kind of supportive of Kevin in one way or another. I know that there were other people who were more,
Yeah.
hostile. Um,
Yeah, some people read him. Some people read. I mean, Robert Rector basically read him the Riot Act. He was
yes,
like a big
right.
guy at Heritage. Seemed
Yeah,
it was generationally split. The younger staff seemed more ambivalent or supportive, and the older staff, like who've been around for a while, were pretty peeved as to what was going on. And so, like where we are right now is, I think he's gonna stick around,
hmm,
but there's a lot of uncertainty about its reputation, about the Heritage Foundation's reputation. And I think, Kevin Roberts did save his job, obviously,
right.
but, you burn up capital and, you call in some favors. So, I mean, he is clearly going to be a weakened figure. But it's not just, I don't really want to like Heritage Foundation is what it is. Most people don't care. Most people don't know. I think the
Right.
bigger thing that this points out is the rise of anti-Israel sentiment among the youth and the prominence of groypers. And if you listen to not Nick Fuentes, Dick Canania, like groypers are the future and all this stuff. I don't actually think that's true, but
Yeah.
I think it's like something that we have to talk about now, which didn't have to talk about before.
Yeah. So one thing in the last week or so, I went back, and in the early 90s, William F. Buckley wrote this essay, which was later turned into a book called In Search of Anti-Semitism. And it had to do with Pat Buchanan and some other figures on the right and the left who had been accused of anti-Semitism, and in typical William F. Buckley style, it's very long, discursive. I think it when they originally published it as an essay, it took up the entire issue of National Review. So imagine like you're a subscriber to National Review and you're like, oh great, it's the whole issue, and it's just Buckley, 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 Jews, Jews, Jews. Um, and this is kind of, so reading this kind of makes me think that this is sort of a perennial thing that just keeps happening over and over, because there's like a lot of, obviously there's differences. We're much less print-based culture now than
Yeah.
we were at the time of this book. I think that really comes through. And also, more vulgar, I would say, in a lot of ways. Those two things probably go together. But a lot of the arguments and beats are in this book are the same as from the last couple weeks, including stuff like, oh well, all the young people, support Buchanan. He's the way of the future, and so on and so forth. And Buckley, I think, played both in this essay. He kind of was playing both the Ben Shapiro and the Kevin Roberts roles, in that he did say, like in the essay, he kind of says Pat Buchanan said stuff that was anti-Semitic. I don't know that he was motivated by anti-Semitism. Maybe he was motivated by, trolling. I think Buckley called it like iconoclasm, but it's what we would now consider trolling. So he does that, and people now look back to they remember it. They think of this as, Buckley canceling Patrick Buchanan or something like that. Although weirdly, I think this essay came out in like the fall of 1991, and a couple months after that, Buckley endorsed Buchanan in the New Hampshire primary against George W. Bush as like a protest candidate. So he wasn't totally canceled at that point. But just like there's many of the same arguments. Is can you criticize Israel without being called anti-Semitic? Does it go beyond that? What are young people are losing their the taboos around like the Holocaust, and that sort of stuff is fading away, and left wing Palestine, lot of similar beats. So that sort of makes me think, maybe this is just something that kind of periodically happens, and who knows, in the 1990s, the United States did not descend into, the Fourth Reich.
Yeah. I will say, though, back then, both parties were moderately pro-Israel, although under George H.W. Bush, arguably his administration was a little bit more Israel skeptical maybe than the Democrats at that time.
Right.
Whereas now you definitely have a Democratic Party where like the young activist class is anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. Even if the voting base overall, like I don't think like, the church lady in South Carolina, I don't think she's anti-Israel. Not necessarily pro-Israel, right. But I don't think she's anti-Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
But like in terms of the staffing class, they're definitely anti-Israel. And then among the Republicans, you still have the boomers who are, Ted Cruz, I'm gonna use the word Israel first. I don't mean it pejoratively. I just mean the way they say it, though. Like, you remember, like Sarah Palin had a flag of Israel in her office, which, okay, whatever, it's not a big deal,
Yeah.
but it got to be a bit much, I feel, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, and if it's going to be an America First movement, I think that introduced the tension. I think just the term America First, like that was naturally going to introduce a tension, right? Because you
Right.
can't because the whole idea is like, Israel and America, there's like no difference and blah blah blah, basically. But
Right.
that's not always true. It just hasn't always been true. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Israel is an odd issue in that it has never been, I mean, these days, basically all issues have to become immediately politically polarized. And so, one party takes one side and then the other party takes the other side. And even stuff that people had not heard of until last week, suddenly they have to take that side. And Israel, certainly historically and even now, is not politically polarized. So you have both pro-Israel and anti-Israel segments on both among both conservatives and liberals, Democrat Party, Republican Party, and it is more. I do think it does seem like it is more generational, and it's also perhaps more establishment versus anti-establishment type stuff. I mean, that's definitely true. So we'll have to see, what
Well,
happens in like 30 years or whatever. But
there are parts of the activist class for the Democrats that are very anti-Israel, but the reality is, I mean, we'll see. But American Jews still tend to lean Democratic,
right, right.
and traditionally they've been like a massive part of the Democratic intelligentsia, and you know, there are more moderate. Okay, we're not talking like John Podhoretz level pro-Israel, but still left of center American Jews still tend to be at least moderately pro-Zionist, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's in the party. And then with the Republicans, the boomers are going to be around for a long time. And I hate to say it. I kind of hate to say it. I mean, I kind of don't hate to say it because I don't want people to die, but you know what I'm saying.
I
Um,
get it. Yeah, I get
this
it.
idea that it's like these 20-something staffers are going to be the future of the party. Yeah, they're going to be the future of the party in 20 or 30 years. That's a long
Right,
time,
right. Yeah.
So we're still in 2025, and boomers are still reigning. So I'm
And they
not
might change their mind. Kanye, I saw a video of him the other day apologizing to some rabbi for his, anti-Semitic statements or whatever. So, who knows? Maybe someday Nick Fuentes will run for Congress, and will be
okay.
like,
So let
I
me
think Israel is a great ally.
Yeah, let me just ask you a question about this. What do you think? Because I guess I'm moderately skeptical of this idea that the Republican youth are just like Fuentes, groypers, and fan. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yes, I agree that there are some, and they're pretty vocal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, what do you think about that?
So I'm not entirely sure what to think. It is the case if you look at like polling, young people, and this is true both on the right and the left, are much more skeptical, not only of Israel but also even of Jews in general. I think you could say it's a minority. It's a minority even among Gen Z, but it compared to the Boomers, where it's pretty much non-existent. You can get to maybe a quarter that are hostile, right? And so that I think that phenomenon is real, and it also kind of seems like I was thinking just today because Nick Fuentes, aside from all the like Nazi stuff or whatever, one of the weird things he said on the Tucker Carlson show was that he liked Stalin. Right? He was a kind of and that seemed kind of odd. And then there's this progressive Senate candidate in Maine, Graham. I don't even know his name. It's with a P or something. And he's like
That
he's like a big Bernie left, dirtbag left type of guy. But I guess he had some sort of Nazi tattoo and I saw a video just today that it was like it was for some sort of like left wing congressional candidate, and like, what is that Nazi symbol, the like dark sun that's got the like
The Sonorad. The
yeah, the
Sonorad.
Sonorad. So it was like they had a video that was about this candidate, and they had a Sonorad in it, but it was a Sonorad made up of like hammers and sickles. So I don't know what that means. Maybe that's just taboo breaking. I do think it's notable, if you think about, there are a lot of young men who, are into Fuentes or whatever, but there's also, I think this is more of a piece of, there's also a lot of young guys who are really into BAP, right? Or Andrew Tate, or even to a lesser extent, Jordan Peterson. And those figures, Tate, I think, probably is anti-Israel. BAP is kind of ambiguous. Jordan Peterson is a huge Zionist or pro-Israel, I guess you should
Mm-hmm.
say. Um, so I don't know that the Jewish question is what is the like fundamental motivator. Actually, things like gender politics seem to be a bigger deal. Like, what is it? So I suspect that at least part of what is driving young people to kind of adopt these edgy views on Israel or Jews or whatever is precisely because they're taboo, right? And
Yeah.
this is a way of like James Dean style. What are you rebelling against? What do you got? Asserting their vitality, and they're fed up with what they see as kind of like a anti, like a society that is over censorious and is not that is like set against them in various ways. And so that's obviously, I mean, that I think that's part of it. The browning of the country, I think, is also part of it, because as we know, non-white people just don't have the same hangups about, or they have different hangups, I guess, but they don't find these taboos uh, compelling, to the same degree as uh, white people do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure stuff about what's going on in Israel also has something to do with it. So there's probably a bunch of different factors that are involved there.
Yeah. 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 There are. I mean, I think that's the key. That there's multiple different factors, and people want to like put it down to like the Israel policy, or Israel's like war, or maybe just America first as an ideology. But this is probably something that's just generational succession, in terms of just like what is relevant and salient to people and what people care about. And also, Israel's a very different nation than it was 30 or 40 years ago. It's, to be honest, like a lot less European. The number of Haredi Jews, like like ultra Orthodox Jews, they strike many, just normal Westerners as weird, and they kind of want to be weird because that's the whole point of dressing like that and stuff, to separate themselves. But then within Israel itself, you have a lot of these Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews from totally different backgrounds, and they're all mixing together with the Ashkenazi and kind of creating like a new Jewish Israeli identity. I don't know if people like remember Yitzhak Shamir in the 1990s. He was a prime minister, and also like Shimon Peres. These are people who led Israel up until the 21st century, who were not born in the state of Israel, in Palestine.
Right.
They're born in Poland or something. I mean, Shamir came as a young, very young man, but still,
Yeah.
my point is like, this idea that Israel is a colonial implant is not like totally false. Like it's, people say it in a pejorative way, but it was a project of European Jews in the 20th century.
Right.
But that Israel is just dying. I mean, it's literally dying. There's not that many Jews that are left who were born or arrived during the British Mandate.
Right.
And there's new generations of Jews who are like half Polish, a fourth Iraqi, a fourth Moroccan. It's like totally different thing, a totally different country in a lot of ways. So the country that Joe Biden remembers is does not really exist anymore. It's a new country in a new circumstance, and I think people are adapting to it.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's true. Although I will say, in some respects, the newer Israel I mean, is maybe more. It's closer to the American ethos in various ways because,
sure,
like, the original Israel had like all sorts of weird socialist stuff,
yeah,
communal living, and it was much more secular. And even if Orthodox Jews are not, I mean, they're not. They have their differences, culturally and practice theologically with Christians. They share more of a religious sensibility as opposed to the kind of secular, atheistic, you know, uh,
yeah.
notion.
The secular socialism is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Of the Ben Gurion and Golda Meir and all of those folks. And it is as a conservative right winger. I mean, Israel. It does seem like it's kind of a test case for a country with a successful right, where the left
Yeah, Israel has a
basically
right
just
and a center.
collapsed. You
Yeah,
know,
Israel has a right and a center,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Uh,
It's not the only. I mean, it's not the only place where that's happened. Hungary is also a place like that. There's other places, um, but yeah. So you would think there are some respects, at least for the right side of the aisle, where it ought to be more appealing now than in the 1970s or so forth. And
sort of, but I think part of it is like with Americans in particular. To be honest, like we have our own kind of like mythos of what Israel is,
right,
right?
yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know what it's really like, and so
No, people have an idea. I okay. The funniest story, like how Americans like American evangelicals traditionally the
I think
dispensationalists.
I know. Well, yeah, you go. I have one. It might be the exact same one. I'm not
I don't
sure.
know. So, well, this is like kind of an obscure one, but like there was an issue, and I've heard the story multiple different times from people. So American evangelicals go to Jerusalem, and they meet Arabs with a cross, wearing a cross,
Oh,
and
okay,
ask them when they converted to Christianity.
right.
Which does not make the Arabs very happy, by the way. But that's when these, because it's like weird because on the one level they know intellectually that there were Christians there because they read the Bible,
Right.
but their idea of Israel is so detached from what they read in the Bible in a way that it's like they're surprised.
Okay. Yeah. So mine is different. It was a prominent conservative pundit who thought that the kibbutzes
Oh
were
yes,
like, yeah, they thought they were like religious, Orthodox Jewish, organizations or whatever. So, yeah, I mean,
yes,
America, for better or worse, we don't really know a lot about the rest of the world. For
that's
the most
true.
part, we don't care. But to the extent we do care, oftentimes it's hard to break through the like mythos to the reality. Um,
I feel like foreign policy in foreign countries um, only matter to us kind of like as some downside albatross, like or the Iraq War. You know what I'm trying to say? Like people
right,
cared, but it was like again like all the details. Nobody, I'm sure most Americans still don't know what Sunni and Shiite are.
right,
You know,
right.
we I think Americans what little they know, like Anbar, like all the Fallujah, all these words. I think that it's been like totally flushed down the toilet of their memory hole. It's just like America's I bet you most Americans have no idea anymore of any of those places. Just like during the Vietnam War, they were like, Saigon, all these,
Right.
we just don't care about, we're a big country. We got stuff going on. Like
That's true.
don't
Yes.
need to care, you
Yeah,
know?
that's right.
So should we talk about Watson? What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's move to the paywall.
Yeah.
So you should
Okay.
subscribe so you can hear, Oliver Zeeb's inside dirt about how James Watson was reading his blog in
Uh,
2007.
all right. So yeah.